What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of JaAR. JaAR, for those of you that may be new, stands for Joe
and Amy
Review. This is our weekly show where we review the Magic stories. And this week we are continuing through, as we have been, with The Gathering Storm by Django Wexler. This week specifically we are covering Chapter 13. My quick review at the top of this one was, this was less action-based than a lot of the other ones that we've enjoyed recently, at least since like Chapter 10 and on. And yet I thought this one was very good. This one had a lot more comedy elements than we've had in previous weeks, which made it enjoyable. And there was a lot of really good character work, which is the kind of stuff that, if you've seen other JaARs, you know that that's what I'm all about. I love that. So, what about you? What were your thoughts this time around?
Okay, so I think this story was a lot more my style than a lot of the ones that we've read already, and I think that makes me like it more.
Okay. Why do you say that?
You mean like what aspects of it make it my style?
All right, so maybe we'll get into that into the full review. Yeah. Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll get into that as it goes on. But yes.
Trying to find out what
no, that's
you're
fair.
asking.
Yeah, no, it's a good point though, because as we say, the reason that we give the quick review at the top is because we want to let you know if it's worth it or not to go read the story, and we think it is definitely worth it to go read the story. There was one particular moment in here that we'll cover that I think is so good that there's no way we're gonna do it justice. It was just so funny, and we'll talk about it, but we're not going to be. You know, there wasn't enough room for me to write down all the quotes, so I highly encourage you to go read it because it was a good one. And then, of course, we would love for you to come back here and watch the rest of our review because that's the idea. But, you know, again, we encourage you to read the story before watching this review. So, with that being said, on to the full review itself. In this story, we had a bit of Vraska, we had a bit of Kaya, and we had a bit of Rahl. So all the big key players were on display here, and then a lot, if not the majority, of the secondary characters as well were on display here as well. And that was good because none of them felt like they got lost. Like they all felt like they had their time.
Yeah.
And were given their time, which is very good and important. But we start with Vraska. And we start with Vraska and Zedek. We find out a little bit more about her throne and that it's getting a little bit better and it's more cushioned now. And that's great. And she's just there. And this is the first time that we've seen Vraska since Chapter 10, where we see her last kind of just as she is killing or petrifying Isperia. And that's the last we see of her, and then we hear about the fallout for the next, 2+ chapters. And now we're back, or she's back with us. And we get to see her and hear from her. And despite the fact that she was somewhat manipulated into killing Isperia by Nicol Bolas, she still kind of looking back on it, says, I should have done that a long time ago. And with how she kind of approached it and what she said to Isperia and what Isperia said back to her, that makes sense.
Absolutely does.
Yeah, and
when you read it, the only thing I said was, yeah, you should have.
And it did. She said it felt very good. She was really glad that she did it. And again, that's why she felt she should have done it sooner. And I appreciated that because I feel like there are a lot of tropes in pop culture where you hear like, oh, it's not worth it, man. It's not going to make you feel better. Or in a different scenario, it's not going to bring the other person back or something to that effect. And sometimes this was a case of the revenge playing out and the person did feel better afterwards. After getting their revenge, after enacting their revenge, whatever you want to call it. And it seemed like for Vraska that it was very cathartic for her, which is great. That she, even though it was at the behest of Bolas and that it was kind of following his schemes to allow Dovin Bond to then come to power, which helps Bolas out, it also helped Vraska. And I mean, that's arguably Bolus's plan all the time, right? Is to just give people what they want, but only enough of what they want to help him as well.
Right.
So it makes sense. It's almost like, he's a pretty smart dragon or something. Maybe.
Yeah.
And then we get to what I was commenting on was the super comedic part, which was the secondary character, as I call her, of Hekara, showing up to Veraska, which I was actually a little surprised by.
Yeah,
because it just seems like all of the alliance type people of Ral's group that are now going after the Gruul and the Golgari and whatever. It seems like Hekara is part of that, and it seems like they would very much want to stay away from Veraska right now. But Hekara is Hekara. And again, I still think, like I said previously, I still think that Hekara is smarter than she lets on, but also childlike in what she's doing. I love that she fell in the moat twice. Veraska's like, you fell in the moat? There were crocodiles in there. And Hekara's like, yeah, they were bitey. It's just like, yeah, they'll tend to do that.
Fall in the moat. She obviously purposefully went in the moat.
Twice.
She wanted to play with them.
That's Hekara. But I loved that Hekara was like, well, hey, we're friends. And Veraska's like, we're really, where have you been? And Hekara's like, no, you hang out with your mates and you protect them and make sure that they're okay, and we're all friends, Come back to Ral. He'll talk to you. You shouldn't stay here because he's coming, and then you guys are going to fight, and you're not supposed to fight your friends. It's, it's very much the, little kid idea of, everybody's got to be friendly with one another, and...
I disagree.
Okay, go ahead.
I think she's the only one who makes some sense.
Hekara is.
Yeah.
Okay.
I agree with her that they're being idiots.
Well, that's fair, but also, the thing is, no one is admitting that Bolus is manipulating them all. Even the ones that know that they're being manipulated by him. Right? Kaya isn't mentioning it to anyone. Ral isn't mentioning it to anyone. And Veraska isn't mentioning it to anyone. And if anyone opened their damn mouths, they would all realize it. So yeah, I guess that's a good point. That, they'd realize that it's actually all Bolus is doing.
Right.
And that they should all just work together instead and deal with this problem up front.
Him,
yeah.
Which is literally what they were supposed to have been doing from the start.
Correct. Yeah.
And what Ral has been trying to get them all to do.
Right. Which is why Ral is the main focus of these stories, is because he's the one who's on that track from beat one,
Right.
Whereas Kaya is trying to become accustomed to being the guildmaster, and Veraska is doing the same, but also dealing with the fact that she now has her memories back but doesn't have Jace, and what that does to her. And Ral is just laser focused. He's like, this is what we have to do. Bolus is coming. We need to make sure that we're ready.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, this whole story has been Ral working towards trying to better that for everyone, and it's not going great. It's not going too great so far.
No, it is not.
No, but I mean, yeah. Still, that moment, like you said, even though it was very pertinent, and Hekara may very well have been the only one speaking the truth or making any sense, it was also hilarious. Just everything about that conversation was great. It was hysterical. I loved it. I loved it so much. And then we move on to Kaya. And Kaya is with Tomek, who, my God, we haven't seen Tomek in a while. Mm-hmm. And in this particular scene with Kaya and Teysa and Tomek, we don't get a ton of Tomek, to be honest. He's just kind of there, and he kind of walks her there and stands off to the side while the two ladies talk, and then... I
kind of forgot that was Tomek. I felt like it was somebody else.
Yeah, he was just, there because he's a named character, and we know who he is, so they named him. Otherwise, it would have been the guard walked her up, and then the guard went to go open the door for her later. That's literally all that he did. He, walked her to the room, knocked on the door, and
No, it's just that later on they could say guild business.
Yeah, Yeah, which is why he was so stressed out. That's a fair point. Yeah, uh, interesting. But that scene was kind of cool because, we talked either last week or the week before about how Kaya was forgiving more debts.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, of course, there was that moment where Kaya forgives the debt and then says to them, but don't tell anybody else that I did this. And we were both like, yeah, okay. No one knew that they were coming to you today for that exact reason. So when they come back and they look all happy, of course, even if they don't say, yes, she forgave our debts, they're not stupid. Like, the other people aren't idiots. They're going to get it. And we saw her forgive 2 debts, the old man and the old woman, right? And that was kind of the thing where it was like, oh, this is going to become a thing. And come to find out, when Kaya meets with Teysa, it's been a whole thing.
Oh, it's a thing. It's a hell of a lot more than a thing.
Yeah, and because when Teysa started talking about it, it was like, oh, she knows that Kaya forgave those debts of those 2 people. Nope. Teysa knows that Kaya forgave the debts of 67 people to the tune of 246,312 Xenos. Now again, it seems like the Orzhov in this story are super based on current events. Like, by a lot. The fact that Kaya just flat out looks at Teysa and is like, yeah, but that's just a drop in the bucket. Like, you say it like it's such a big deal, but it's like nothing. I've seen what you're worth and what you all make in it, and I can feel all the what she says is, I can feel all the contracts. She's like, those 67 were like the smallest of fractions of the contracts that we have out with other people. It's not going to hurt you at all. And Teysa's like, that's not the point. You could,
whatever bullshit she says.
Right. And Teysa's upset by it. And I can, to a degree, understand. But at the same time, there are people out there.
We live in this world.
Well, right. And in this world, there are people out there who do not enjoy change. And change is sometimes necessary. And Teysa, is trying to come at it from a sensical perspective in saying that the Orzhov have responsibilities as well, and that without all of this, even this small amount of money, they may not be able to meet all of their obligations, and if they can't do that, then the guild could fall. And Kaya starts getting a little heated about the fact that, like, you're taxing people's great-grandchildren for contracts that these people entered into. And Teysa's like, well, they could have just not signed them. And it's like, that's the same argument that they'd made previously of, like, if you don't want to be in debt, don't borrow money. It's like, so then in some cases, then where do they get the money from in the first place? Like, is they supposed to just find it on the street, And one of the lines that was used, which I thought was very pointed, so much so that I wrote down the quote, Kaya says, because Teysa's argument is that the guild depends on all of that money and all of the contracts. And Kaya says, if the guild depends on enslaving children for the debts of their fathers, then maybe it deserves to be destroyed.
Exactly.
I guess for people not up on current events, maybe I have to explain, but I'd really rather not. There is a real-world implication in that sentence. There's like 5 real-world implications in that sentence, I feel like. And each and every one that is in your head right now is just as valid as the one that's in mine or Amy's. So just, whether that is your full belief or not, that you agree with Kaya, you agree with Teysa, you're somewhere in the middle, you're further beyond either. Regardless, that is, real world discussions that are being had, and
we got to see an actual argument of someone who's like, wait a minute, this society that you've created is a detriment to everyone involved. And socialism is better, and the two of them kind of, just in the end agree to disagree because they can't.
Well, and
Because they can't agree.
right, and I mean the whole thing with Teza was like, you're in power, but you're not. Like we don't want you to be. Just stop messing around with our stuff and just wait until we can figure out how to get you out of here.
Right.
That also is a thing that sounds
Yeah.
familiar.
Yeah.
It's just like I said. It just seems like everything with the Orzhov is just so pointed at least American politics, if not, the UK's got some things going on as well.
And not just that. I mean, it can be related to plenty of things throughout history as well. If you want to sit there and say the Orzhov represents, aristocracy and or dictatorships and,
and it very heavily
represents democracy.
Well, it very heavily, sorry, I'll try that sentence again. It very heavily previously, that's why it was so difficult to say, represented the patriarchy just as a concept as well.
Okay.
Just, again, fat old men with too much money and not enough, that they're just hoarding because they want to hoard it.
It reminds me of those political cartoons in school where the politicians in the political cartoons just literally their bodies are a bag of money.
Yeah, it was just the super overweight guys with the stogie and the top hat or whatever, and the monocle and the dollar signs everywhere.
Right.
And I mean, there were pictures. There was art on magic cards for the Orzhov from original Ravnica block and then Return to Ravnica block that showed. I mean, there was literally one that I can think of off the top of my head, and I'm sure all of you are yelling the name at me. But it's literally a very overweight man laying on his back. There's a mouth in his stomach, and people are just walking off a plank into his mouth, in his stomach. It was not very subtle, if you.
No.
But yeah, so that it makes sense that is the way it is now. But it's super interesting to see at least Django Wexler's take on it, if not Wizards combined with Django Wexler's take on it. It was very, very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, we could talk on that point for hours.
Right, and we have as well previously, and I look forward to being able to do it again if it continues to come up. Which I'm sure it will, but for now, let's move on just for the sake of time. Although, Amy, maybe you can cover this next topic. We had a scene with Ral and Tomek
Yes.
in their home. Would you like to discuss that a bit?
In their home? I thought they lived in two separate homes.
No, I think they lived. I thought they lived together.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure.
I'm not sure that I necessarily knew that.
Mm.
Okay. Well, anyway. So I guess Ral was at home when he was having this sort of mental breakdown with work.
Yeah, well, he said he came in and stood in the doorway and had this issue, and then when he heard the lock click, he realized he was still leaning on the door. Remember?
No, I know. But yeah, Tomek came home.
Mm-hmm. And Ral was home.
Right.
He was leaning on the door.
I just assumed that Ral was off somewhere in this crazy state that he was in, trying to draw on walls and stuff.
No, that was just what Hikara said.
No, you're not remembering the last story where he left off.
Oh yeah, well, okay.
Where he was really into work and hadn't seen Tomek in days.
Yeah, that was in his office. But he finally got some time off.
I didn't realize his office meant his house.
It didn't. Then he got some time off and went home.
Oh, okay. I guess I missed that part of it.
Yeah, that's all. But yeah, so Ral is home.
Right.
And with Tomek.
And Tomek shows up and, wants to eat curry, like they do.
Like they've done. We've seen that, yep.
And then sex scene.
Well, that was hilarious to me because I'm reading, and it's Tomek, Ral kisses him, and Tomek was in mid sentence, and when Ral finally lets go of him, Tomek finishes his sentence, but kind of breathing out and being very surprised, but appreciative of it. Breathes out and he's like, but the curry, and Ral's like, later, and Tomek's like, later. And then they're about to go off, and that's when Amy goes, sex scene. And I was like, passage of time. Because
And I was like, damn it.
because there's the line that separates, in this story it did both. It did either passage of time and or change in perspective from Veraska, then to Kaya, then to Rahl. And then once we were with Rahl, then it was passage of time from, Rahl and Tomek in the room about to go have sex to Rahl and Tomek in then their bedroom after having had sex. Presumably, of course, because technically it wasn't mentioned, although it's pretty obvious, I feel. But yeah, I thought that was a very classy way of doing it. It for people who have been in those scenarios in their life, that is very much how it happens. It's just, and it's it was just super real. I mean, that the way that this relationship between these two has been written is super realistic.
Yeah.
It's super respectful. It's not, ooh, look at us, we're a gay couple, isn't that great? We're in Magic Story. No, it's just they're a couple and they happen to be two men and they're living their lives, and it's great that it's not so heavily focused on for the fact that it's
less pandery than other things have been in the past.
Pandering is definitely the word I was looking for. Because it is not pandering. It's just a positive display of a healthy, normal relationship between two people, and it's nice to read. It makes perfect sense, and it's being done / was done very well.
Yes.
And that's kind of it. I mean, the last thing that we then see is Rahl with, Aurelia and Dovin Baan and Kaya kind of planning their next move. And we get a little bit of a touch of a comment from Aurelia, which I really appreciated, that the Gruul are putting in some work.
Yeah.
They're doing a damn good job, and Amy's the Gruul of the group, folks. But they talk about, or Aurelia talks about the fact that, she says it's a shame that you didn't capture that Domri raid because he's doing a very good job at leading the Gruul. They're a lot more organized now. They're putting forth a lot more of a unified front, if you will, or a lot better of a strategy. And Rahl's like, yeah, sorry, I guess. What the hell did you want from me?
If you remember when we read the story of the Gruul battle
last week, I believe.
I said, this doesn't sound like the Gruul. Because they were being very methodical, very specific.
And
instead of just pure chaos. And
if you recall, I believe I was the one that said that I think it was due to Domri's leadership. Because, like I said, he's a planeswalker. He's been to other planes. He's not just a Gruul member where it's just, we're here to just destroy or whatever. He's possibly seen other strategies and been able to kind of implement that for himself and for the Gruul as a whole.
Right.
And
at least kind of showed them ways to be a bit more effective.
Clearly. Well, and again, I mean, if they're not smart enough, and the Boros are smart enough and are led by a battle angel, right? They're going to be the ones who are going to get the upper hand often. But if you then catch them being complacent, them being the Boros, as the Gruul, then you're going to get a leg up. And you might not fully, outright defeat them or something, but the same on the way back. They're not going to defeat you either. It's just a way for this battle to continue on a little bit more of an even keel. And the interesting thing that I found was that because of that impact, it means that there are less Boros forces to help with the Golgari fight.
Yes.
And combine that with the fact that Hekara is nowhere to be found anymore. It's been a while since Rahl has seen her, and the Rakdos forces were supposed to help, but now Rahl's not so sure since Hekara hasn't really been around.
Right.
That presents a bit of a problem. And it kind of means that Kaya and the Orzhov really have to step up.
Right.
And Kaya's totally okay with that, but that could put even more of a strain on her and Teyza.
Yeah.
because she's supposed to be staying out of it. And sure, maybe she's staying out of it in terms of forgiving debts, but not necessarily with fighting. And so, seemingly, based on the way that this chapter ended, that is exactly where we're starting up next week, which will be interesting to see. The battle itself, how it goes, and then, obviously, more importantly, I would think, the aftermath. Because we know about the majority of the key players and the fact that they're not going to die from this fight.
Right.
Right? Hikara is the only one who will eventually, I guess. But we don't know exactly when that's going to happen. But we'll get there. And that makes her interactions with Vraska in this one all the more interesting. As, you know, a thing to keep in the back of our minds for if and when that occurs. But again, I don't know that that's this upcoming battle. I don't know that it's not. But we will find out next week when we read Chapter 14 and when you join us, hopefully, again next week, in our review of Chapter 14.
Yeah.
But overall, like I said, we thought this was a pretty good one. We hope
Yes.
you did as well. We would love to hear any and all thoughts, opinions, comments, questions, and concerns that you might have in the comments down below. Thank you for sticking with us as we are a little bit further behind, but it's because we've just had a lot, you know, poured on top of us all at the same time. But to be fair, I think this should hold us out, combined this with reviewing the Wild Earth Quest after we're done here. This should hold us out until November, when the next novel comes out, the sequel to the War of the Spark novel. The War of the Spark Forsaken, I believe, is the name of the, if I recall correctly, is the name of the sequel. This being the prequel. So it went main story, then sequel, then prequel, because sense and how much it makes, and we won't go there. But hanging out with us, leaving your opinions in the comments, talking to us about it, talking to your fellow Vorthos about it, is a great way to show off your...
Hashtag Vorthos Pride.
Thank you. Appreciate that. It was a very busy week for us last week. This week we are winding down a bit from it, but that does not mean we do not have more content coming up on both this and our video game channel.
Yeah.
So feel free to check out both of those. They will be here in the middle for you to click on to subscribe. It helps us out a lot. There'll be videos on the sides, as there tend to be. So feel free to check those out. Last week we did a cooking video, surprisingly, on this channel, so you should check that out, as well as the fact that we opened 4 pre-release kits live at midnight pre-release, as we always do, or have been for many sets previously. We were sponsored once again. Our sponsor is amazing. You should definitely go check out that video and then go check out our sponsor. We put out 2 videos at that midnight event, which was a lot of work, a lot of exhaustion, but it was completely and totally worth it. I hope you all enjoyed your pre-releases. Please let us know how those went for you. I did middlingly at all of them, to be fair. I did like 4 of them, and I came out about even in wins and losses in total for all 4. So a little bit more upsetting in terms of how I would have liked to have done, but that doesn't mean I didn't have an absolute blast, as I always do. So
I actually had a good time as well.
that's true. Again, our sponsor store was an amazing environment with some really awesome people. So you should definitely go check out them and the videos, I should say, that we made with them. So, and we thank them again for that. So that is going to be it for us this week on this episode of JaAR here on Geek for All. I have been Joe.
And I'm Amy.
Thank you all so very, very much for watching. And as we always say, in whichever video of ours you watch next, we will see you all next time. Thanks, everybody.